Hey everybody, Brett Tadlock, TNArtist here. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Wanted to show you a little bit more with Rebelle 5. So I've put together this little lesson that we can do here, and just thought we could have some fun with it. And essentially what we're going to do is kind of a snow globe kind of look. I've got this set up to do on a postcard, because that way if I wanted to do it so that I could give out little postcard prints to friends and family, I can do that as well. So it's basically, the standard postcard is 4x6 here in the US, and so that's roughly what I'm going with. I'll go a little bit smaller so that way I can have this edge showing on the postcard, and it will leave a little bit of space around it, because when this saves, it usually saves as a PNG file, so it leaves that edge there. Anyway, I wanted to show you a couple different things with the new Rebelle 5. And so one of the things we're going to do is work on some of the stuff that comes with it. So I've got a few things set up here. One is I've got the pigment turned on, so this will make true color pigments like you get with paints. I'm going with the watercolor set, so it has all the standard watercolor colors that tend to come in a set of watercolors, and that way I can have it. I also want to have my mixing palette set up, which is right here. So this, clear that. So this palette comes up and lets me mix my colors on it. So I'm going to have it up here, so that way if there's something I want to try and play around with and mix a certain color, I can do that there. And then I've got stencils set up, so that I've got some stencils here in the stencils window. So I'm going to use some of those. I have the visual settings turned on, which is just F12, gets you this. And this is where you can look at some of the different behaviors of how absorbent everything is, to re-wet stuff, how much can you, all of these are just the defaults that open up, which tend to be 5 when they open, you know. So like there's 1.4 that's here, and then that 10 that you see right here for strength for the granulation. So I don't know if I'll play with this or not, but I just have this off on the other monitor, so that way I can look at that if I want to. And so that's some of the main things we're going to work with. So what I want to do first is I've got this line drawing here, and I've got it's on its own layer right there. And this is just going to be my guide, same as if I sketched it out on paper to do it. And I'm going to start with the globe here. And I want to go to the circle, and shift as you drag it keeps it being a circle. I'm going to kind of roughly line it up with the circle that I have here. So, okay. So now I have that set up to paint inside here, and I could make a mask and everything else, but this is essentially going to work as a mask, so it's just quicker. Now what I want to do is come over to my water, and I'm going to wet this area. And I'm just, right now I'm using my mouse, and I'm just holding the mouse down. And because if I let off, it'll put more water. And I just want one nice even layer of water. Like so. Okay. So you see how that all fills in? Now remember, when you've got it in water mode, it shows blue for the water. But when you turn it off, there's nothing there. Okay, so just something to remember, this is not going to be blue. Okay, so now the water layer is off, and I'm also going to pause diffusion by pressing right here. And then I'm going to come to my watercolor brush, and I'm going to come down here to some of these splatters. And I think what I'm going to do is maybe kind of a starry night kind of scene, maybe a snowy starry night inside the globe. And so I'm just going to throw in some of these blues, purples. So maybe even just a hint of green, I mean a yellow here and there. Interesting. More blue, and let's change to a different spatter brush, and let's just go with some white. Okay, and you can see that nothing is happening at the moment because the diffusion is turned off. I'm getting a little bit of lag from my recording software. And probably because Rebelle is kind of setting up the calculations in the back, waiting for me to click this little button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the pause diffusion, and then I'm going to come right up here, and I'm going to grab the tilt, and essentially I'm going to spin it around right round, baby. And have it move around a little bit to swirl all of this. So it's kind of a neat effect. So here we go. So pause off, this on, slowly spin it around, give it a second, spin it. You can see that granulation kind of kicking in. And I'm just kind of looking for an interesting pattern to see something that I like. Now I'm going to pause it again. That's kind of interesting. Let's throw a little bit more color on it. Maybe some more blue. Some blue down here. I'm going to throw some real purple on here too. Let's get some nice deep saturation of purple. Maybe just a little bit of white in there as well. And pause. Let it kind of kick in. Really kind of swirl it. And this is totally 1000% up to what you like. So right now I'm just kind of tilting it ways that I see that is kind of cool. Tilt. So I'm basically laying it back flat on the table, if you will. It's going to rebound off the edges, kind of come back. I'm going to pause it because I really like this line right here. I think that is neat. Let's go ahead and fast dry, which means this paper is still damp, but it's drier than it was. So if I look at the water, I can see that it's there. It's dry, but it's not like completely dry. Okay. So I think what I want to do here is we take another one of these splatter brushes. Let's come down here to this one. Just give a tap here and there. And you can make these as big or as small as you want. Totally up to you. And pause. Pause. That's got a really cool bloom right there. You can see it. Same for right here. Fast dry to seal to stop that movement. Throw a little bit of white in here. Unpause. Pause. Maybe a little bit up here. Unpause. Pause. Fast dry. I think I'm going to put a little yellow too. Kind of like that, but let's change the spatter. No, Control Z. Let's try this one. And pause. Pause. Let's see what a little orange does. So we get some of that complementary colors going on here. Unpause. Pause. Let's put a little white. There we go. That kind of gave it a little bit better look, I think. And I fast dried again. Okay, so what about a little red? Let's bracket keys to the left, make your brush smaller. To the right, make it bigger. It's going to string in a line of spots here. And unpause. Pause. Oh, that was cool. Let's go with this ultramarine blue. Actually, I'll tell you what, let's color sample. We'll do Alt. Color sample. Throw some of that purple in here instead of the ultramarine. Alt again. Quite a few dots of this. Pause. Okay, I think that's pretty cool. I like that. So I'm going to make a. I'm actually going to dry this layer. So dry the layer. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to go to my ink pen. And just go with this dip pen or any of these solid ones right here. Come to my white. Still get it paused. And I'm going to kind of follow the contour of this circle, like so. And like so. I don't like that. Control Z. There we go. That's a little better. And because the paper's dry, it's only bleeding a little bit, but I can wet the layer. Pause it, and that gives me that diffusion around the edges because the ink kind of soaked into the paper. And then I unpaused it and got a little bit of the interesting look. So I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to take my ink pen and just make a circle. Pause it. Like so. Now that if I think this is too stark, I can take my blending brush, bring the size way down, and lightly go over it like so. And I think doing the inside edge kind of gives a nice look. And again, I'm going the same curve as my glass for the snow globe. Let's quick dry that. Go back to the pen tool a little bit. Pause. Hit that one more time. Just like that. So now we've got, unpause it, see nothing happens because the layers are dry. So I think that's going to give us a nice background for what we're wanting to do. Okay, so now the next thing I want to do is work on this base. So I'm going to hide the Control D for deselect. I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to go to freehand, and I'm going to just freehand around. Now you notice I got off here because that was actually my hand was overlapping and I couldn't see it. So if I do that, I can just hit Alt and then select, back around, and it takes away whatever I don't like. Which right now today is, must have had too much coffee. Is there such a thing anymore? Alright, so when I got it roughly shaped where I want, Shift adds to it. There we go. Alright. I'm not going to overly worry about this because it's still handmade art, so it doesn't have to be perfect. If I want perfect, I can always go into Photoshop and just photo bash something instead of this. Just cleaning up the selection. There was an overlap where it wasn't selected. So I can do this as much as I want, but like I said, it's not... Don't freak out about it too much. There we go. Okay, so now I want to do the stand. So let me make sure I'm on my stand layer. And for this, I'm going to not wet the whole paper like I did before, the whole area. Instead, I'm going to wet certain sections. So I'm going to come across here, like so. Okay. And then I'm going to switch back. I'm going to take bone black. Let's put it up here. That's interesting. So this is an interesting thing I just realized I hadn't had happen before. My stylus doesn't get recognized up here, but my mouse does. So that is interesting. Blending that white and that black because I want some of these grays. Back to my watercolor brush. Come back up here, and I'm going to go with the mop. Much smaller version of the mop. To select Turkish gray, lay this in here. Like so. Because this is dry here, it's hitting that edge. Okay, grab a little bit of the darker color. I'm just going to kind of go along the bottom, give it a chance to diffuse. It's back a little bit. Go with my ink brush. And I'm going to add the ink brush adds in a lot more pigment at a time. So to give you this interesting thing, I'm going to pause that diffusion and I'm going to quick dry it. Okay. Now I'm going to come back to my water to come along the bottom, back to my watercolor brush, and essentially just repeat what we just did. Okay, and that's diffusing. I can switch to my blend. Now what I'm doing is I'm just going back and forth, kind of thinking about this curve here and how that would look. So the curve's going to kind of go away as it's facing you. I'm coming around like so. Like so. So this is totally up to you how much you want to blend this. I'm going to unpause it, let it kind of diffuse and soften itself a little bit. I'll fast dry the paper, unpause again. That gives us an interesting green kind of look. We come to this brown, which is really gold ochre. And I'm going to take this flat and just kind of go across it real lightly from the top and the bottom, like so. Let it diffuse out, and then when it's to where I like it, I'm going to hit the fast dry. Okay, so we can come back and play around with this a little more, but let's kind of take a look at how this looks. So since we're doing watercolors, we've got some transparency here because watercolor builds on top of watercolor. So what you can do, because I've still got this selected, I can come down here and you have some options here. The main one is that you can just hit delete and it deletes it. And now that is sitting pretty much inside there. Okay. You could also go above it and add white. So for example, if I didn't want to do a destructive version of that, just come here, I could add some white. Really, probably the best thing here is to go with something like the oil paint so that it's nice and opaque. Like so. So now that's there. So if I get rid of this, you can see where I just put the white behind it. Okay. And that gives you a nice, if I decide I don't like this later, I can just delete this layer. But at the moment it's hiding that for me. So Control D. And now we have that layer there. And again, we'll come back and clean this up a minute and give some more detail and stuff for it. But the next thing I want to do is come right here above the globe layer, so it can be above this one too if I want. So we'll just add another layer. And I want to add in some trees. So I want to make sure they stay inside the globe. So I'm going to do Control and click on this layer. Okay. Now it's selecting the contents of this layer, and since that layer had, it's watercolor, so it's not fully, it doesn't give me a nice clean selection. All right. So I can either leave it like that and then come back later and just use the selection tool here to make that circle again and delete it, which I might do. Or I can just try and paint inside here. But for right now, I think I'll just go ahead and do Control D and deselect. I'm going to grab some of my stencils. These stencils are from my, really from my ArtRage selection, but you can import them into here as well. What I'm going to do is just, oops, Control D. These. Can I get an idea? I'm trying to remember real quick if there's a way to actually hide the stencils like I can in ArtRage. Nope, Tell you what then, let me show you, in case you don't have these. Let me show you how to do these without a stencil. Alright, so I'm going to come to my ink, turn the water way down, brush in blue, this purple, this black. I'm going to blend them. Not quite black, but it's not white either. I mean, not pure black. So, alright, so I'm going to draw a line, and then I'm going to just kind of scribble back and forth, like so, skipping some spaces. So this is literally just a zigzag back and forth, okay? Then you can tap in some smaller spots here and there. You can do another one. I'm sorry, I got a little bit of lag there, I didn't realize it. Just like so. So essentially these will look like similar trees, same but different. So, and so you just kind of scrub them back and forth. The reason I use stencils, which if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that the reason I use stencils is just to save time, because I can lay those out on here quicker to keep drawing all these out. Put a few other ones here, and I'm also going to go through and do stuff here. I want this to be kind of sloping off to the side because I think that's interesting. And these are really quick, so you can take, you know, as much time as you want to do these. I'm just trying to get this in so that I can show you how to do it. Like so. So then once I got some of these laid in, I can then go in and even take my, oops, I'm hitting the wrong key here. I can even grab one of my other ones and add some change and stuff by just tapping in some of these spatter brush. Oops. I like that one. Just to make sure this doesn't spread too much. Alright, so now that gives us the tree line that I wanted. You can kind of start seeing how this looks like space. I'm going to grab, like I was talking about a minute ago, bring this down, drag it over to match up with my circle, like so. Shift Control I to select the inverse, delete. And now I trim that off. And Control D, deselect. Now see, I've got this overlap here, but I can use that to my advantage by just going to my blend brush here and just kind of blend that around. So kind of soften this across here, like so, and that kind of seats it on there. Okay, so then we've got that done. Now one of the things I want to do is some stars in here, over top of here. Go to my white, I'm going to turn my water all the way off. Spatter brush, go really large, too large. Not that one either. So let me come back So you just gotta, it's hard to remember honestly which spatters are which. So I'm just going to throw some of these in here, like so. Because it's wet, they're still diffusing a little bit, so I can let that happen. And quick dry it, and I can turn down the opacity, which by doing that kind of gives me that look of like salt, like if I'd put salt on here. But then I can make another layer and add some that are brighter, which gives a little bit more depth. And you can kind of even play around with different ones if you want to. Control Z if you don't like it. That gives us some of back to the stand. I'm going to Shift I to go back to my ink brush. I'm going to grab this darker color here. I'm going to turn the water down. Now what I want to do is just add thick still. A little bit of definition to the edges. Not necessarily a full outline. Oops. Just trying to just quickly erase that, but it was a little too big. Okay. Pencil actually. Just kind of draw that in there real quick. Grab my selection tool. If I don't like it, or blend it in. Blend better. Just kind of softening some of this back because I want to have a different look to it. There we go. That's a little better. Soften this back too because it looks weird. So, got that there. You can also go to stuff like the marker tool. For example, if you wanted to add a shadow here and there. And you can also add a little bit of reflected light here, which can be interesting because it looks like that's actually generating some light. Like so. Blend it down just so. Now if you want, you can do something like taking the pencil, because this is what I thought about doing with this. Select the color, and then if you want to add in like some wood grain kind of look, you can. And that is where you would just kind of play around with it a little bit back and forth. So that's totally up to you if you want to do that. And this, which I'm going to do, I'm going to actually add in. I want this to be more of a black base. So I turned on the tilt for a second just to kind of get that to flow down. We've got some granulation. There, grab a little bit of that blue. Get that to flow down. Kind of soften it out. so. And I might even erase some of this back a little bit. Just so it's not so obvious. Okay. So, one of the things I want to do here as well is I've got this light, which means that there would be some light there. So I'm going to grab this bit of gray, put just a touch of a light spot there, kind of have it arc over. I'm going to blend it ever so much on the side there. Like so. And then the last thing I want to do is add here below the stand, go to the spray can, which is basically an airbrush. I'm going to select just the slightest underneath there to kind of set it. Like so. I'm going to grab a little bit of this blue, this purple. Like so. I'm going to then smudge it out. And then I want to take a marker tool, it's black, bring that down, come along just the very bottom. Like so. And so that kind of separates it out from what I want. And I can tidy up any of these edges as well. Like so. So, you know, it's just kind of an interesting little project to play around with some of the different things that you can do in Rebelle. Make a nice little card or something like that if you wanted to give it to somebody. Get kind of that interesting look. The other thing that you could do as far as all this goes for adding stuff here is you could add, you know, you could play around a little bit more. Colors a little bit, so like if you wanted to have, like maybe that was shining through, you could do that. Like so, which always kind of gives an interesting look. And then it's just a matter of, you know, how much do you want to play around with it. But I think that'll work, you know. I would love to see and hear, you know, if you guys do this, what you do and how you do with it. I think it'd be cool to know how you've done with doing everything. So give this a try. Let me know what you think about it, how it comes out, and, you know, what the challenges you had were, what were the things that you enjoyed about doing it. Alright, so I hope that helped. Hope that gave you a little bit of an idea of some of the stuff you can do with Rebelle and how you play around with, have some, you know, some of the different effects. Thanks for watching.